Women work harder. I mean, my experience training men and my experience training women, the women, they don't have much ego. They're there because they want to be there. They're inspired by something bigger than them. The brand has really blown up to where people know if you come to Fear Training, you're not only going to get results, but you're going to have a good time being there.
When you put your mind towards something and you want to get it done, you're going to find a way to get it done.
I've actually finished my own digital course focusing on fitness coaches starting and growing their business to making at least 10K a month, and also building an online platform to getting clientele.
If somebody was to come to me, I would try to make sure that they're already in a responsible financial position. Looking yourself in the mirror, you cannot lie to the person in the mirror.
Who do you want to be? Who do you want to become?
Everybody, I am excited to have on two guys who are really killing it in the finance and the fitness industries. One of them is a former guest, and this guy is doing some amazing stuff in the fitness world. So I'm excited to have on Markos Mosi and his buddy Christian Warren. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Markos, it's been what, 6-7 months? Almost a year, probably.
Almost a year.
So you have your own gym in the East Bay, and you've been making a lot of content. You're definitely killing it out there. How's it been so far since the last time we chit-chatted?
Oh, man, lots changed since the last time I've been on here. Things are going well, though. Things are going really well. I've been able to add new trainers to my gym, so that's expanding in that sense, as well as myself expanding in the business coaching field now. So I ventured into that where I'm helping fitness coaches start their business and grow and scale it to at least 10K a month. I've had success with some of the trainers that I've already brought on, where they have had no training experience with me, or in general, no training experience, and have been able to literally build their business up to where they're able to make 10K a month or just grow their clientele, which is huge for a lot of them, which they had no prior experience, or they were working at a commercial gym and trying to struggle to make ends meet, kind of showing them the world of private training and how you can build a business out of it and build a career, even make a living better than what they were ever before. So it's definitely been growing. I'm excited for it. I'm actually launching my digital course and that mentorship this week. So I'm really excited for that. And I think I'm more than ready to take on that new challenge, as well as still training full time and building my online clientele too. So it's going well since I was last here.
Well, I definitely want to talk about that. Going back earlier to the business now, how has it changed in the past? Because when you came on, we were still at the end of that phase where everybody was doing remote work, and we thought they were all coming back to the office. Times have changed, or situations have changed. People are not back in the office. They're back to doing remote work, and they're consistently doing it. So are you really having is it a challenge for you just to try to get people into the gym now?
Surprisingly, no, and God willing, it hasn't really been an issue trying to get new clientele or anything like that. I think the brand has really blown up in the East Bay, especially to where people know that if you come to Fear Training, you're not only going to get results, but you're going to have a good time being there. And it really separates the aura really separates from most gyms, or most private gyms, most commercial gyms, whatever it may be. It's just that aura that you have, that community that's been built there. And like I said, I've just been really blessed and fortunate to have the clientele, or just the people that are coming through those doors that help build that community, help build the brand to where it is now. So now it's more so letting people know that, hey, yeah, sometimes it could be a little pricey, or it could be a different challenge, but what you're getting out of it is something that you haven't really experienced before. And not only that, hey, you're getting in amazing shape in the meantime. So it's a win-win.
That's awesome, man. And Christian, good to meet you. If I've seen a lot of your content out there, you're really doing a lot to try to get people to understand their financial issues and how important that is to get that in line. Because I think, as we have all talked about in some form or other, it's if you don't get your finances right at some point, you don't really see how it affects everything else in your life until maybe it's too late. And then at that point, you're just working so much to try and catch up that it just becomes daunting. But you guys have known each other for what, 10 years almost?
6 years.
Six
years.
Yeah.
All right. And you're one of his success stories, I'm guessing, right? You were telling me earlier about how you were in a different place in your life, and then Markos helped get you to a level where you're like, man, I'm really I'm really
Yeah,
feeling
it's
it
kind
now.
of just it was just an organic relationship. You know, I met him in the gym. I was just working out one day. It was summer. I was working out at the gym, just getting ready for my senior season of football. And he saw me doing some box jumps, and he walked over to me. He was like, "Hey, man, you play ball?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm actually a football player for Arroyo." And it's kind of funny because he actually went to San Lorenzo High, which is a rival high school. He gave me a little flack at first, but it was all fun and games. And then from there, we just continued to, build a rapport. Every time we saw each other in the gym, it was love. And then it was crazy to see what we had done or what he was doing throughout the years. And then I kind of went on my journey. I was a bigger guy, my fitness journey. I was the max I got was 295 pounds after high school. And then I seen what he was doing with Fear Training, and he would do his Fear Friday workouts. Honestly, I didn't do those at Crunch because I was a little intimidated at first. I knew that I couldn't do the pull-ups. I knew I couldn't do the push-ups. I kind of had to take my own route. And then fast forward, I basically had lost almost all of the weight going into 2020. And that's kind of from there in 2023, once Fear Training was established, I asked him to if I could be a service to him. And that's kind of how I got my apprenticeship in a sense. And then from there, helped him with business, and things kind of kicked off.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Royal High School, huh?
Yes, sir.
And I went to Mount Eden.
Oh.
So, I mean, when I went to Mount Eden, our football team, I think they won one game, and that was the freshman team. So
Yeah.
Us too.
we didn't really have something to be proud of, but Hayward High at the time was always the ones. They were the king of the hill. I don't know what they are now, but that was the big rival back at the time. But what position did you play?
I was a D lineman and an O lineman.
Both sides. Okay.
Yeah.
So at that point in your life, where you're what 200 some odd pounds? What
Yeah,
was it?
I was about 240.
So what was it that? See, I would think that just being in football, you'd say I need to be in the shape that I need to be in for the rest of the team. But was it just that you weren't sure what that looked like? You were just in the gym doing whatever, and okay, I look like the way I look like. I'll perform the way I perform. Or was it something about how you were like feeling physically that made you say, you know what, I could be in a better spot where I could be a better football player and also a better person in general?
Well, actually, after my senior season of football, I decided to kind of walk on in a sense as a redshirt to go to Laney. That was the year that Laney actually won their state championship. And so I knew I had to bulk up. So I bulked up to about 285 pounds. About halfway through the year, my grandmother got sick. And she's the light of my life. Love that woman. She eventually passed away a couple months later. She took me in when I was 12. Had some family that has dealt with addiction issues. So my grandmother, she's a very big influence on who I am and why I move the way I move today. But from there, I got to the peak of 295 pounds when my grandmother got sick. And that kind of launched my journey into me just becoming a man. I knew I had to lose the weight because I was giving up football at the time. Once my grandmother passed away, I knew I had to, help pay the bills around the house. I kind of had to put football on the back burner. But I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to play football, there's no need for me to be this big. So then I decided to lose the weight, kind of using some of the intangibles that I gained from football, learning how to work out, and just turned me into a whole different person, whole different animal. Once my grandmother passed away, that was kind of the fuel on the fire.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about motivation right there. It's like, hey, I got to do what I got to do to make sure that the house is taken care of. I mean, it definitely sets you apart in a way where you don't want people to have to experience that in real life, but sometimes it takes something as hard as that before you say, I got to make that next step in my life. When that whole thing happened, Markos, how did you see that interpreted? How did you say, okay, this is somebody that I know I can definitely help and we can get him to where he needs to get to?
Yeah, and like you said, when we first made that connection, he was a lot bigger than what he is today. So around like 270, 280. And when he came up to me, he just pretty much asked me for some fitness advice, kind of like what I was doing. I always have done like circus style workouts, which incorporate strength training, and pretty much that's what I've based my business around. So he would always ask me like, oh man, like, what do you think I should work on? Or like, hey, what type of circuit are you doing? And then for me, it was just kind of seeing over the months, this guy's losing a lot of weight. Like, oh man, he's looking good. Or he got to a point where got to what, 180, 170.
170.
And I was like, it was just kind of like a night and day where we see each other pass by each other every day. And I'm like, whoa, dude, like how did you do this, you know? So for me, that was kind of like my first instinct to be like, oh, this guy is serious just about himself in general. Didn't really know exactly what was going on in his personal life or anything like that. Like I said, I would see him on social media. We see each other in the gym, but just seeing him make that transformation and him going hardcore at it, and seeing where he started from when we first had that conversation to seeing what he looked like maybe a year later down the road, I was like, oh man, like you're serious. Like something triggered you or something switched where you're like, I'm all in. And even at that point, we hadn't really like had much conversation to see what exactly he was willing to work on. But when he did reach out to me, early last year, yeah, when he did reach out to me and even offered to help me in my business at the time, it was just kind of like it just really worked out well because I was really looking for some help, like a direction, and just trying to not necessarily delegate, but just some help with social media marketing aspect. So when he reached out to me, I guess that was like the first like light where I'm like, you know what, let me start delegating some stuff, or let me see how I can help him develop his skills, and at the same time also him help me. So we were working together for a few months, and then he was just like, hey, look, this is actually what I'm working on, and I really want to spend all of my time in it. But exposing himself to how a business operates, or we started working closely together, and he's like, oh, like, what are you working on? And I'm like, oh man, I got all this stuff laid out for today, and we got to get done by today. Him kind of seeing like how the back end, the admin stuff is working, really that's where his work ethic is at now, because he's like, okay, I see what it takes just from a minute standpoint. Now he's applying all those same principles to what he's building today.
That's awesome, man. I mean, it really just does speak to when you put your mind towards something and you want to get it done, you're going to find a way to get it done. It may not be the way that you initially thought it was going to be. We may have thought that life was going to take us a certain path, and it never works out that way. Something happens, or this person moves on, or that business venture fails, whatever it is. You're thousands of dollars in the hole, but you always find a way out of it. You find a way to keep on, moving, going on there. And so with that, in Markos, especially with what your business is, you had mentioned something. This is how we kind of like reconnected recently about how, there's just a lack of, from what we've all seen, either accountability or a lack of motivation, whether it's social media, whatever. What is it that you've been seeing lately, whether it's people who've come through the gym or maybe just your experiences on social media that's causing a lot of this?
Yeah, and I'll just start again with Chris, using him as an example. He took that initiative to reach out, didn't even know if he could even offer any help or anything, or knew exactly where I was in my business, but he took it upon himself to reach out for an opportunity to just work closely within someone that's working on a business. He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't ask for any monetary value. He just asked, hey, just help me become better, or help me understand how to operate a business. Help me understand what you do on a day-to-day. And for me, that was kind of a little bit surprising, because I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I could tell you what I do on a day-to-day, but you don't want like anything in return. So where in most cases you build these connections with people, and the first thing they wonder is, okay, well, what can I get in return? And I think that's the biggest thing that I started seeing, working with people closely, whether it's business or working with them as clients, is that there's a threshold that people are willing to go to. And a lot of times that's the difference between being comfortable and getting pushed to the point where you're uncomfortable. And it's not necessarily like a boot camp style or like, rah-rah in your ear or anything like that, but it's just more so like, hey, this is how far you've gotten now, but this is how much further you need to go, or this is how much more work you need to put in to just get over that small little hump that you may be facing. And I think over my time, and like I said, like the last year, I've been able to work with people a lot more closely, whether it's business or just with clients as well, to seeing that a lot of them aren't willing to get pushed that extra mile, or aren't willing to invest that little extra bit to get them to where they want to get to. And I think that's the big thing that is like separating the people that become successful versus those that kind of get stuck and then like fade away.
And why do you guys think that is? Is it we're living on social media and it says I can get this life that I really can't have? What do you guys think it is?
Yeah, I think today with social media, everybody's looking for that quick fix, that everything's very microwavable. It's a lot of instant gratification. People are looking for that one hot tip that'll, you know, change the course of your entire fitness journey. You know, that one little quick fix, the fat burner that's gonna make you lose 70 pounds overnight. You know, and it's like, yo, yeah, there's no.
Man, talk about that one.
There is no quick fix. There is no substitute for hard work and consistency over a period of time. You know, it's just about putting the days in, one day at a time, stacking those wins and creating some momentum for yourself. That's what a lot of people don't do. So they'll get on a roll and then they'll self-sabotage. It's happened to me plenty of times, especially when I was a bigger guy. I'd get on a roll and then I'd self-sabotage, and I'd have to, you know, reel myself back in and, you know, course correct. And then from there, you ascend to a new level, and you use that as a learning lesson and a stepping stone.
And I think that's the part that you said right there, is that you were able to reel yourself back in and be like, hey, you're slipping up.
Yep.
All right, let me get back on track. And I don't think it's a getting started problem for a lot of people. I think it's just a, hey, we have to keep it going. And if you're not able to keep it going on yourself, or take those skills or taking that value and being able to do it on yourself, then people aren't willing to continue that investment process. And I think it's just, again, you're reaching a threshold that you're willing to go to. But when you need to really get over that hump, or where you need to reel yourself back in, I feel like people kind of get stuck in that, like, oh, how do I get back to this point? And they just start looking back instead of trying to look forward.
Yeah. I think it's also just looking yourself in the mirror. You got to be accountable with yourself. You have to be. You cannot lie to the person in the mirror, because if you do, you're only delaying your process. That's literally all that's happening.
All these problems in the world, and I want to get to you guys in a second about what do you think motivates everybody, but for me, it's just as simple as, individually, you as a person, what do you really want? Like, if you look in the mirror right now, as you just said a minute ago, what do you really want? Do you really want $1 million a year? Do you really want a big house? Do you really want children? Do you really want to live here? Or how many of those things are there because everybody tells you that's what you're supposed to want? How many of those things are there because you think that's going to make you happy or have more of a purpose? I think once you actually look in the mirror and you tell yourself, this is what I actually want, and don't really care what anybody else thinks, and as long as you're not hurting anybody else, then you do what you got to do. And once you're honest about that, you're not going to get swayed by what the public tells you, your friends tell you, social media tells you, because you know what you want and you're chasing it. So what if it doesn't have as many zeros at the end of it? So what if it doesn't have that big house and the big house in Beverly Hills? So what if it doesn't mean you're driving around the Lamborghini because it looks cool? But on that point, what do you guys think motivates men, especially men in our age group? We'll say 25 to 45.
Right now, I say 28, 35. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, they're single. I would say women. Women right now, especially post-COVID, has been the biggest motivating factor for most men that I see, that they're like, oh man, I gotta dress this certain type of way, or get this type of designer, or I have to look good because I want to get her, or look good because I want to make a statement. But it's never really like, I'm doing this for me, or like, I want this job because it's going to help me, or whatever sense. Is more so like, oh man, well, if I can get a couple of girls looking like this, or a couple of girls with this account, or kind of, hey, look, let me go outside and splurge a little, whatever it may be. I think it's more the women and then the status that they're after. And big with social media, it's that status, you know, that women provide, or just the status that money provides. And I think that's what a lot of people get motivated by, rather than what's it actually going to do for you.
Now, are they telling you this, the people that you, whether they're clients or friends, or you can just insinuate based on what you're doing? I need this.
Yeah, based on what you're doing and how you're moving and the decisions that you're making, whether it's financial, business, or just how much are you willing to invest in yourself, so that you're able to move up the ladder. A lot of people that are motivated by women or by status, they'll do things or spend money on things, or, you know, invest in things that don't really have any return on investment for them. But it looks good as a status symbol, or it may look good to shawty at the club on the weekends, but what is it actually providing you, you know? And I think social media plays a huge role in that part.
Definitely. I think the same. I think women in status are the number one and number two. It's really 1A, 1B that men are really chasing. And I think it's because, I think it's because women, this might be controversial, but as a man, I'm gonna be honest, as a single 23-year-old man, I would say I'm in the prime of my life right now, and I feel like I'm continuing to level up. If we were in a hypothetical situation where there were just completely men on earth, right? Just men on earth, and obviously we were designed to be attracted to women, right? How hard would we actually go if we weren't attracted to each other, right? And there were no women. How hard would we actually go, right? And I'm not saying that women are my focal driver. It's not, because I hustle for myself. I hustle for my grandmother. I hustle to create a legacy for my family. But I would be a fool if I was to say that there wasn't some kind of that having the flexibility and the freedom, as I continue to ascend, I can choose the partner that I would want to be with, right? Because some people get to a certain point and then they settle and they create unhealthy relationships for themselves, right? But they continue to be in that certain situation, when if they were to just find somebody who maybe was in maybe of higher caliber, I hate to say it like that, but higher, who had better quality character traits, right? Maybe he found this woman at a seminar or something like that. You wouldn't be forced to settle. You could expand your options and find somebody who, okay, I chose this person instead of settle for them.
And to be 25 again, mid-20s, just putting myself back in that mindset of what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean,
I wasn't thinking that.
You weren't thinking that. And you know, all the OGs would tell you back in the day, you know, they'd say, hey, I'm older than you. This is what's going to happen. This is what you got to think about. And they tell you that, but it's in one ear, out the other.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I get, but that was you. But this is me. The times have changed, and I'm going to do something different. I figured out the formula when you really didn't. And
still learning, man. Still learning.
You're definitely still learning that. But then again, when you really think about it, our minds aren't really fully developed till 25, 26 years old. That's when everything starts to click a little bit more. And if you haven't made any life-changing decisions prior to that, you're probably going to be in a better position going forward. So if you don't have 3 babies at 24 and you didn't buy a house that you couldn't afford, and you're not up to your neck in student loan debt by that time, then there's a good chance that if you keep hustling, you're going to be in a much better position at 35 than you ever thought you were. But when we're 25, 35 is too far away. That's a long time, man. Or me, 41. And to think that I'd be in this position now at 41 when I was 25, 23, I just think at that age, you're thinking so much about the right now, because you got the hormones going. You got I got to impress everybody else, other men, other women, get one of this gets more of that. And then without thinking long term, like, okay, what does this actually look like for me? Where do I see it in myself in 5 years? Well, I'm not thinking that far ahead. I just want it right now. I got to fix this thing. And unfortunately, advertisers catch on to that. They know guys in that age what they're looking for, and they know how to sell them on certain things to get them to buy their product.
The social media effect.
Yeah. And so as a personal trainer, like Markos, so how do you combat that when you know you have somebody coming into your gym and you want to help them become the best version of themselves, but they just can't initially see how much work that actually takes and what it actually looks like to get there? How do you work through that?
I think the best way to do it is just be transparent with them. I let them know right off the bat that this is not going to be an easy process. I usually do 3-month programs. And obviously, at the end of the 3 months, they're more than welcome to re-sign and continue on working with me. But I let them know from that point on that, hey, we're going to be locked in for 3 or so months. I'm not going to make you sign any contracts or, scare you away by making you think that this will be a commitment. But if you want to see some results, you at least have to be with me for 3 months. Not saying that you won't see results sooner, but if you're with me for 3 months, you're going to be able to build those lifestyle habits. You're going to be able to build consistent habits, build your discipline, and you'll actually start understanding the process of getting in shape, or the process of what it's like to be disciplined. And I think by me being transparent, it kind of narrows the room for error, because they can't say, oh, I didn't know it was going to be hard. Well, I told you it was going to be hard. Oh, I didn't know that I would have to alter what I eat. Well, I told you that from the beginning. Or I didn't know I couldn't go out every single weekend. Well, I told you it probably wouldn't benefit you. I definitely give all my clients a sense of accountability as well. So if they do want to go ahead and, you know, mess up or do whatever, I let them know like, hey, I mean, you want to go backwards, that's perfectly fine. Hopefully you continue to pay me. And if you want to keep going backwards, that's fine with me too. But this is what you're doing wrong. So I leave it up to you to either make the adjustment, or you can continue investing, and we can just keep going through this hamster wheel. And so, but there's a sense of accountability.
Yeah.
And just being transparent has helped a lot.
I mean, as a business owner, you have to make your money. Otherwise, the gym doesn't stay in business. So, of course, you need the memberships. You need people to come in and pay. Is it difficult for you to separate, you know, okay, I got a business, so if they're paying me, I'll just give them what they want, versus I know he's paying me, but I really want him to be better than what he can be, but he's just not. He doesn't want to move past this one metric. And but if he's paying me, I'm like, well, okay, the business hat comes on and he's paying the light bills, so I'll give him what he wants. Is it hard to separate that, or just to accept that fact that sometimes you're gonna have clients like that?
I would say more so in the beginning than now. Since I'm not so worried about building my clientele or anything like that, now I'm at the point where, hey, if we're going to be working together, please don't waste my time. I don't want to waste your money. I don't want you to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. Because at the end of the day, I want to gather these testimonials. I want people to transform their bodies so I could put myself out there more that this is what I do. So if I already have somebody that is not willing to put in that effort, before I even sign them on as a client, I'll make sure like I'm asking the right questions, or we're going through the right process to make sure that I'm weeding those people out. Just because, yeah, it'll be great if you just keep paying me and you just keep BSing your way through. But at the end of the time, like if you could say like, hey, I've been training at Fear for 7 months and you look exactly the same, that's not going to be a real good look for me, right? It would just be like, oh, he's just after the money, which for me, like, yeah, money is great. Of course, I want my business to grow, but I want people to change too, and they can refer back to me and be like, yeah, he helped me get to this point.
What have been some of your experiences, Christian, with helping Markos out building the brand, and you're trying to make the business look as, you know, be the best that it can be? And maybe even from your point of view, you might see, okay, some people just aren't trying as hard.
For sure. It's hard to not have like that little bit of, I hate to say it, but like judgment, just because I'm like, yo, I'm close with this man. This is my brother right here. And I'm just like, yo, you know what he pours into you on an everyday basis. He pours life into you guys. He speaks life into you guys. And he gives you his all. You know what I'm saying? He goes in there and he tries to give you his all. So I'm like, you coming here and being, you're here in the right community, but at the same time, it's like, you can give more, and you can dig a little deeper into yourself, right? Because like we all, like one of my favorite sayings is new levels, new devils, right? At every new level, there's a new devil, right? There's some obstacle that you're gonna have to face in order to ascend to the next level. And I think that's where a lot of people get. A lot of people get to this point where, okay, well, I've been working out at Fear. Well, I lost X amount of pounds, right? And they get a little comfortable, right? And they don't really want to see where they can push themselves, right? It's definitely, we have a lot of people who work their ass off and are grinding. And you know what I'm saying? It's admirable to see. But for those few that who are, you know, capping themselves, it's a little frustrating, just because of like, not only what he pours into them, but at the same time, what they can pour into themselves, you know?
Do you think guys get more motivated by you guys getting on them, or maybe the other guys in the gym who are just working and they could just observe them? Wow, I saw him 2 months ago. He looked like this, but now he's been putting the work in, and you know, I've really seen the changes in them. Do you think it just speaks more when they see the results from somebody else versus a trainer telling them?
So this is the kind of like the fine line. So I myself, I don't work with men per se. That's not my specialty. I primarily work with women for many reasons. One being that women, and again, this might ruffle some feathers, but women work harder. In my experience training men and my experience training women, the women, they don't have much ego. They're there because they want to be there, and they have a goal, and most of them have intrinsic motivation. So something that inspires them, whether it's their kids or whether it's like, hey, I've gained X amount of weight in my pregnancy, I need to get this off. Or, hey, I'm getting married in a year, I need to fit in this dress, you know? So over my time in working with women, I've seen that they're inspired by, yes, the other women in the community too, but they're inspired by something bigger than them. Whereas men, again, it could be something as, again, just speaking from my experience that I've worked with men, is that, again, there's more external motivating factors that they're chasing versus internal. Which again, there's nothing wrong with that. You want the house, you want the money, you want the girl, whatever. That's great, but long-term wise. And I think that a lot of men, they'll be like, oh, well, man, he looks good. Like, what is he doing? And they're not really willing to put in that extra forth, or they try to look for more shortcuts, or they're like, oh, man, well, you know, if I don't really need to pay for a trainer, I can just look this on YouTube, or I can just go ask him, like, what is he doing, or whatever the case is, or I could take these supplements. Whereas with women and their bodies, they're not willing to take as many type of supplements. A lot of those supplements aren't even good for most women. So for them, they're like, hey, look, I gotta look this good, or I want to get to this goal, or I have this goal for myself, for my family, for my kids, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get there. So that's what my experience.
It's almost like if you put a picture of yourself like with, you know, flexing in the mirror, you're going to get more attention from dudes because they want to, dude, how'd you get 18-inch biceps?
Yeah.
Funny how that works. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think it also kind of boils down to the fact that when it comes down to working out, lifting weights, and just health and fitness in general, I think it is kind of like an ego thing as well with men, because it's like, and they don't see it like, I feel like they don't see it from the perspective of paying for mentorship in a sense, rather than they see another man trying to teach them how to do some type of masculine-esque activity. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like a father figure. It's somebody who is ahead of the game from them, like because that's they're obviously ahead of the game, because that's why you're seeking their guidance, right? But I feel like it is ego at the same time, because you kind of get caught in the crosshairs of like, oh, who's this man telling me how to do X, Y, Z, and it's unnecessary, but I think it's just a harsh reality.
Yeah, you know, you want to be the guy in the gym that's telling the other guys, hey, this is how much you can lift, because you want to impress everybody else, versus being the guy that's being told, hey, you got to do.
Sure.
You're right. It does. It's a deeper psychological thing.
It can all come full circle though, because I've been that guy, man. I was that guy who was coming to him asking for advice, and then now, you know, I had my transformation, and people now, you know, sometimes ask me for advice. So it can all come full circle, man.
And I
think
you got
to put that work in.
You got to put that work in, and you got to be willing to not belittle yourself, or you got to kind of like turn down your ego. You know, you have to be willing to be like, all right, man, like, look, this is where I'm stuck. How did you get here? Or like, what did you do? What steps did you take to get to this point? And I think a lot of men aren't willing to let that ego down. And I mean, even myself, at a point where I'm like, nah, I can handle it all. I don't need no help. I don't need to pay for mentorship. And Chris is actually one of the main reasons why I even started investing in mentorship, because he did. And he was telling me like, hey man, like I've been able to make this much progress because I've been doing this. And whereas me, I'm like, oh, this is such a high price. I don't see any value into it. I could figure it out. But that was my ego talking. And that's, again, with the same thing with fitness. I'm like, a lot of men feel like, okay, well, I can just go to his Instagram. I can go on YouTube, and I can build my own thing. I could take these supplements. I don't need to invest in a coach or in a trainer. And that's that big disparity where I'm like, you know, women are more willing to invest, but also they're willing to work harder, do what it takes, because they know they wouldn't do it on their own for a lot of them.
Now, do you feel for a lot of the women clients, the female clients that you have, are you getting them because they're being referred by other women who have already taken your class, or is it just generally, you know, shot in the dark? Hey, I saw your gym online. I want to come in and check it out.
I want to say a little bit of both. I think I put a good amount of content up where people are getting a lot of results, and other women are hitting me up and like, yo, like I want to get in your gym, or like, yo, how are you doing this? And I think a lot of it is word of mouth, where my clients are telling their coworkers or telling their family members. Like, and they see, you know, their family members or coworkers, they see their body changing too. So they're like, hey, like, how are you doing this? Or like, where are you doing? Or what are you taking? And for them, they're like, oh, I just go to Fear. So then they reach out to me and so forth like that. So I'll say it's a good amount. Definitely more references and word of mouth. And then people just like randomly just hitting me up.
This whole thing about trying to get men to take accountability, it's I'm gonna say it's a losing battle, but at some point, it's just got to be like, you got to figure it out on your own, dude. Yeah. You know, I can't help you. I'm not going to make you, but you're really going to have to find out what it takes for you to get the life that you want. Going back to maybe what we said in the beginning, look in the mirror and be honest with yourself, the person that you want to be, the goals that you want, that may not be exactly what you think you're supposed to do or what are being told. But if that's what you want, then go out there and do it. There's a guy in my network now who's 35 years old. He works from home. He's what do you call it? He basically manages a couple of startup companies for them, but the guy makes a killing in money. And he's like, dude, I'm just playing the field. That's what I want to do. I'm not looking to get married. I'm not looking to have kids. I want to go enjoy my life. And some people can look at that and say, wow, that's awesome, man, that you can do that. You make this much money. You can just go fly to Europe and just take a one-way ticket and take your time getting back. Mm-hmm. And then some people might look at him and say, well, he's irresponsible. He's not thinking about other people. He should be thinking about this. And he's like, no, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. Yes, maybe society tells me I should be doing this instead, but no, this is what I want to do. And when I'm ready to make a change, then I'll make that change. Yeah. And if there's someone who wants to come in my life at that point to be a part of that change, then we can have a conversation. But right now, this is what I want to do. I'm not going to lie to myself and just do what everybody else is telling me to do because it's what society says is normal if that's not what I want to do. What do you think about that?
I think like you said, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's being able to look in the mirror and saying, like, be honest with yourself. Like, what do I want? What do I, and I mean, you know, by the time this goes off, it won't be on my story anymore, but I literally just posted on my story today about who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? And going a little bit deeper as well as, okay, now that if you figured out who you wanted to become or who you want to be, what does that person do? What does that person do in their life? What does it look like? What are their hobbies? How do they operate on a day-to-day? What are the distractions they eliminate? What do they eat? And you can go as deep down the rabbit hole as you want with it, but the deeper you go, the more specific you get to that person you want to become. And then since you have it written down, you have it visually, you're now able to kind of create a roadmap for yourself to saying like, okay, this is the stuff I'm doing. This is the stuff I'm not doing. So now let me focus on the stuff I'm not doing to connect those pieces. But if you're not willing to have that honest conversation with yourself of who do I want to be, I think you would just kind of be going all over the place until maybe one day or until you just keep going in circles and you really end up going nowhere. And I think that's the first thing you should do is lay out that blueprint, lay out that plan. What do you want your life to look like next year, 6 months from now? Who do you want to be in your business or on social media? Who do you want to be? And I think once you get that breakdown, everything else will just start going smoother.
And so for Christian, for somebody who's still in his 20s, how do you find the motivation to do this? Because most dudes your age are not thinking this way. And we get it. You know, it's when we were in our 20s, it's the same thing. I didn't think that this way either. Not at all. So not only are you trying to make yourself better, but you're almost also fighting against the rest of the guys in your generation that are like, hey, I want this stuff right now. How do I do this? So how do you balance all that? Because you're hearing the noise from both sides.
For sure. So I think it's creating a long-term vision for yourself as well. Just kind of reeling it back into that everything isn't microwavable. The success doesn't happen overnight, and that you need to create habits and have basically these habits will give you the character traits that you need to kind of, it's like a game. It's like a video game, you know. You need to go to that next level, but your character needs to have certain attributes, certain character traits about themselves to get to the next level. Yeah. And so I think that it's just kind of, in a sense, it's a journey. It's been a crazy 5-year journey for me in terms of just where I started, overweight, to getting fit, and then venturing into personal development. From personal development, starting to venture into business, and then starting to inquire about business, and now I'm on the brink of starting my own business. So just continuing to ascend to that next level, and always fighting that new devil.
So how do you fight the devil of saying, you know what, I'm 23, I should be out at the bars, I should be at the clubs, I should be with the guys traveling around, I really want that new BMW M3. How do you fight against all that? Even though I know you know what the long term is, it's still got to be right there.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. But I don't really know. I would say that my faith definitely keeps me grounded, and I would consider myself a Christian man. But I'm also spiritual in a sense as well. My faith keeps me grounded. It makes me realize that I have a purpose. That's the one thing. I feel like God put me here to serve a purpose. I always felt like I was different. And I don't mean this in some boastful, brash kind of way, but I always felt like I was different than most, and that I have a duty and an obligation while I'm here on earth to make it a better place than it was before I got here. And I feel like it's been evident that it's been working because of the trials and tribulations that I've faced in my life and some of the hardships that I've gone through. I've continued to have this positive mindset. I've continued to be a light to people. I'm not a very negative person. I'm a very optimistic person. I'm very, hey man, you got this. Just keep on going. Just keep on pushing. You know, even, you know, I have some of my toughest setbacks, and I just, hey, keep on pushing. Somehow things work in my favor. And I have seen it firsthand. I've learned from a lot of people's mistakes. I think that's probably the biggest thing. I come from a family of felons on my father's side. Luckily, everybody's kind of, you know, everybody's getting their life their life together now. All my uncles are getting their life together, which is, you know, all glory to God. It's a great thing. I come from addiction on my mother's side of the family, and so I've been able to firsthand see, hey, don't go down that path, right? If you might not know what's down this path right here, but you know if you don't go in this direction, that you won't be headed, that won't be your sole outcome right there. And so I've continued to kind of veer into the path of I would say the unknown. Nipsey Hussle was a big inspiration of mine. All money in is one of my favorite sayings, you know, all money in, no money out. And that's kind of been my motto. I just invested in myself and built the character traits over time to kind of combat staying away from the clubs, staying away from the bars, because I've been through it. Chasing validation from women earlier on in my self-development journey. And I've seen where it's taken me. It can make you look very needy. It can make you look very needy, very desperate. And when you separate yourself from most.
Why do you think people do it then? Why do you think maybe your uncles and whatnot took the path that they did earlier on? Like what was it? Why they were doing it, and why even some guys now that you were saying who are in this cycle where they're trying to impress others, why are they doing it, in your opinion?
I think it kind of boiled down to status and money. When you get caught up in, you know, that dope game, fast lifestyle, you know, you start attracting, you might drive the nice car and you might, you know, pull the baddest one on the block. But at the end of the day, there's consequences that you'll have to face at some point or another, you know? And because they didn't get out in time, they didn't get out of that lifestyle in time, they had to face their consequences, sit down for a couple of years. And
did they know that in the beginning, saying, I know that if I play this game, if I don't get out in time, it's going to come back to bite me? Did they know it, or they weren't even thinking that far ahead?
I feel like it's just when you're doing it so young, you kind of feel like you're invincible. And I've kind of, you know, gotten gamed up from my uncles, luckily, and they've been the ones who have told me, don't go down the path that I did. You know, because then, you know, they'll tell you like they were serial recidivists, you know, for a long time, meaning that they've gone in and out of the system for a long time. And I seen that firsthand. So I think that, you know, luckily my dad, he was, like I said, learning from other people's mistakes. My dad, he, you know, faced a case once. He went on trial and luckily got sentenced to military time. Went to the military, served his time, and came back and became a family man. You know, my dad worked for waste management. He started working for Cisco. They found out he was a felon, right? They found out that he had felony charges, and they fired him. And then he luckily got in with waste management and has, you know, carved a good life for himself, a good living for me, my brother, and my sister. So
that's awesome, man. It's I don't know if they still do that anymore when you go to jail, or you go to you go to trial and the judge says, hey, you want to go to jail, or you want to go to the military? And a lot of guys said, okay, I guess I'm going to the military. I don't know if they do that anymore.
That's how you know he's an old head.
Yeah. They probably should do that more with some of the ways some of the guys are going out there. At least get a choice. You want to go to jail, you want to go to the military, and then it'll probably whip you into shape if you go overseas. Yeah. And like, this is real, man. Maybe they did know or didn't know that if they go down that path that it's going to come back to bite them, but they didn't care, or they thought they could get away with it. And then now looking back on their lives now, they say, you know what? At the end of the day, all that, you know, dopamine in the beginning, it just wasn't worth it long term, because look at what I have to deal with now, that it's costing me years of my life, not being able to get certain jobs, having that on my record, doing this, whatever it is, opportunities that were limited. But you can't see that when you're 18, 19, 20 years old. It's just like, it's another lifetime away. I'll worry about that later. Like thinking about retiring when you're 25. This is, I'm not even the word. I don't know what does that even look like? I'm worried about right now, and then not realizing that the choices you make now are going to affect you later on in life.
It's a long-term play.
And I also think it's just that you don't have that guidance, right? For maybe, let's say, like our parents or uncles or whatever it may be, they maybe didn't have the same guidance. Maybe their parents were working, maybe their family wasn't there. So they didn't have anybody telling them like, hey, you're going down the wrong path. Or even if they did, they had nobody to look up to and be like, oh, well, let me learn from his lessons. Like how Chris said, I learned from their lessons. So you have a vivid picture of like what this life looks like. And then now you make the choice. Like, do you want that? Or do you find a way to go around that? And I think that having that ability to have somebody that you could look up to and be like, ooh, I do not want to do that. I don't want to do that. And seeing what that life has cost them and having guidance of them, the OGs telling them like, yo, don't go down this path. It's fun at first, but it ain't worth it. That having that voice can just literally steer you in the path to where you don't fall victim to the same things that regular 23-year-olds may fall victim to, or just try to get involved in that fast life because you're like, my OG already told me that this ain't for me. So in your head, you're like, all right, I already need to move away from that. So those things don't excite you as much as maybe they would if you never got that voice to tell you. And I think that's one of the biggest things.
I mean, it's so true, because when we talked about the whole idea of accountability, and we think about it in finances now, like there's just this whole talk about people forgiving student loan debt. And I'm a big believer in that. Okay, I get student loan debt is ridiculous, but if you signed that contract 10 years ago that you were going to take out this much money, then you owe that much money. It's not fair to the taxpayers to pay it back because maybe you didn't get the degree that you thought you were going to get, or that you didn't get the job that you thought you were guaranteed to get. If you sign that dotted line, you owe that money. There's a reason why you can't declare bankruptcy for it, because Uncle Sam is going to get his money. It's the same thing with car loans and credit cards. I mean, in my early 20s, I was like 25 or 30 grand in credit card debt because I didn't know how to manage money. And it took me years to finally pay all that off. I don't even want to know how much I paid in interest overall. But the point is that I made the mistake. I was smart enough to know that was my choice. I didn't understand. I can make all the excuses in the world, but that's my debt. I have to own it. I'm not going to take the easy way out, if you will, by declaring bankruptcy. I can't tell you how many people I've met around here that just rack up the credit cards and say, I'm just not paying them. I'll just declare bankruptcy in 7 years, and then it'll wipe it away, and then go from there. Like, it's just going to wipe it away. No responsibility. And then that's how they live their life. And then they in turn attract people with a similar mindset. And then the cycle just continues to go in such a negative direction. If it means you got to take a couple of years to get your act together and pay off some bills and pay off that car, or just live with driving a used car so you can get to a better position in 5 years, that's what you need to do. But so much of that is, I just hear more excuses of why people can't do it versus people just saying, you know what, I just got to go get it done, shut my mouth, put my head down, and do what I got to do. You guys seen similar things?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Christian,
want to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, I tell all my clients, man, I might be able to get it removed off your credit report, right? But this does not wipe your obligation to pay this debt, right? So just because it's not reporting anymore and it's not a negative mark and indicator of your credit, right, and your credit worthiness, doesn't mean that you don't have to pay this debt. I don't give financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but I definitely don't. I definitely don't recommend going delinquent and creating bad relationships with lenders. You know what I'm saying? Because once you burn them once, they are very likely to not extend you anything in the future. You know, and it's not a good way. It's not a good way of doing any type of business either.
I mean, that's just nuts. And then with that, let's talk about the Bay Area specifically, because we live in an area that's pretty much the most expensive place to live in the entire country. And by de facto, probably means the entire world, with the exception of a few pockets like Manhattan or Monaco or Dubai, places that individually are just full of wealth. This is probably the most expensive place to live in the entire world. And people don't realize that when you grow up here, because we're just so numb to it. You know, I mean, to buy a house here, you're talking about 1.5 million, probably on the low end, to live exactly to live anywhere in the 9 Bay Area counties, and that's for a starter home that was built in 1970s. And you know, you need to put a lot of money in that to make sure that it actually gives you the needs that it needs to. So on top of that, with the cost of living, and then you're trying to keep up with the Joneses. You want to buy a new car, you want to start a business, but you also, groceries are expensive. Everybody's talking about inflation, and then it just seems like for a lot of people that they can never get out of the cycle, and there's sort of this mindset of acceptance that I guess I'm just never going to pay anything back. If I want all these things and I don't want to move here, then I guess I'm just stuck living with, you know, always paying bills I'm never gonna pay off. But yet we do see examples of people that said, you know what, I am in a better financial position. Maybe I don't make as much money as the Google CEO that makes 500K or whatever a year, but I make enough and I live off of my means.
Yep.
But maybe it means I make choices that go against what society says, but I make those choices because it's better for me to survive over here. Like for me, I get a lot of flack for this. I chose to not buy a house in the Bay Area. It's way too expensive. I can't afford it with my salary without going deeper into debt. And I've also chosen not to have children while I live here in the Bay Area because it's just way too expensive. And when you think about that, you might say, well, then why would you not want to do that? You know, you're supposed to want to buy a house. You're supposed to want to have a family. It's like, I'm not against either one of those two things. I know plenty of people that have both, but to try and do it in the Bay Area, and then when you look at the numbers, you're like, hey, wait a minute, this is
not making sense.
It's got to make sense.
Exactly. Exactly. But people don't tell you that on the side. And I see so many people working a lot of overtime just to pay the minimum payments to pay for that car that they got, but they also got to pay for the kid to go to school, but they're taking out the 30-year mortgage on a house that they put no money down on because they're in a house, not realizing that, yeah, that $500,000, that $800,000 house you bought, by the time you're done, you're going to put about $2 million into it when you factor in all the maintenance costs, whatever. So you better hope your equity is at $2 million. Otherwise, technically,
you're losing.
It was a horrible investment.
Yeah.
But then they don't see it because emotions come into play, and you just want the idea of saying, I own the home. Forget the numbers don't work. I own the home, and I have the kid, and I have the white picket fence, whatever. And it makes it difficult for people to enjoy their life around here. But I understand why people do what they got to do, and I respect the hustle. You know, if you want to have kids and buy a home, you do what you got to do. As long as you understand what the dynamics are here, then you're in a good spot, because then you won't blame anybody else. You've accepted that, and you said, "This is what I chose, and I'm happy with it. I'm going to go with it."
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is you have to humble yourself. You have to know your environment. You have to know your situation. And again, from where we started in the beginning, you have to know who you are, who you want to be, where you want to go. And I think by humbling yourself, you'll be able to actually take time to look at the numbers instead of making a rash decision. Or, you know, for a lot of people that maybe they work in corporate, they're like, oh man, well, everybody in the office, they have a house, they have a family. Well, I need to go buy a house now because everybody in my department has a house, and they all talk about mortgages and they talk about this, and they're in my ear about why are you renting and so forth. But if you humble yourself and you know why you're doing what you're doing, you don't fall victim to getting stuck in that 30, 40, 50-year mortgage or whatever the numbers are, or you don't get stuck making bad investments because you're humble. You know exactly what you want to do. So for yourself, it makes perfect sense why you don't want to have kids or buy a house in the Bay Area, because you've done the numbers. Now, if you had a million people in your ear telling you this is why you should do it, maybe your decision may be swayed, maybe they won't be, but now you might be like doubling back and like, oh, well, maybe, do you think I should, or should I? Does it make sense? What if you just start thinking about it, but you're confident in yourself, you're confident in what you're doing, and that way you don't get swayed. Your opinions don't get swayed. So I think humbling yourself, and then exactly, again, going back, just knowing who you are and what you want to do, I think it'll eliminate a lot of those bad investments, or eliminate you putting yourself in terrible debt or whatever the case may be.
And it's going back to what our parents told us as well. I mean, our parents try to do the right thing for us to say, you know, save your money. You know, I don't want you to do what I did. I want you to have a better education so you can live a better life. And it's all great advice. But what they don't tell us, because they don't realize this, because it doesn't click, is that all that advice worked for them in their environment, in their time, and things are different. You know, back in my day, my dad worked at AT&T at a warehouse in San Leandro, you know, driving a forklift. That job hasn't existed in a long time. Yep. So, you know, that's being replaced by AI, or it's being shipped off to Mexico or China or whatever it is. So he wouldn't have had the ability to do that same job now. And also back then, that salary was enough to pay for an entire family with the mortgage, with the cost of living, whatever. Now you're in a dynamic where you both have to work just to make ends meet. But then the jobs that we used to have don't exist anymore. So if you want to do anything reasonable around here, you're probably going to have to be into some tech-related field. Yeah. And if AI continues to go in the direction that it needs to, well, slowly but surely, a lot of those tech jobs are going to go away. And then what happens there? Then we get back into bringing blue-collar jobs back to this country, almost blue-collar jobs 2.0. Yep. where you have education, but you're doing blue collar work because we need it. We have a shortage of pilots. We have a shortage of engineers, mechanics, plumbers,
electricians.
Yeah. And some of these guys make good money, 200,000 plus a year. And you wouldn't think about that right away, but because the jobs are so much in demand, that's what they can command to pay. And people think, well, I just want to go work at Google instead.
It's because it's not, and you know, like a better terms, it's not a sexy job. You know, like being a plumber doesn't sound sexy. Being, you know, it might, you know, you want to go pick up that girl. Hey, girl, I'm a plumber. But little do you know, I make 150, 200K a year, but you won't even pass my occupation title to even get to know how much I make. And so I think, again, social media, the times that we're in now, you know, everybody wants to be either in tech or they want to operate, own their own business or do whatever, you know, be a content creator. But you're not looking at like, okay, is this one, is this sustainable? And two, is this going to produce me enough money to where I can make a living to afford to live in the Bay Area, especially. And I think, you know, just that one-dimensional mindset. And like you said, those jobs are going to come back a lot sooner than we think, just because of the trajectory of AI and how it's much harder to get a job now just because of the development of technology in itself.
Exactly. And, you know, in 10 years from now, it's going to look a lot different around the Bay Area than it is now. And people don't, you know,
is.
it's starting to, people can catch it.
Yeah, I think also it kind of, just to kind of touch on your guys' points in a sense and add my own 2 cents. I feel like with you were talking about, humbling yourself. And then you were kind of touching on like the programming. I think it kind of has to do with the programming from our parents, kind of living that American dream, right? So it's like, okay, well, buy a house, right? So that's already that's buying a liability, that's putting yourself into debt, possibly crippling debt. Okay, well, you want to start a family, so you might have to buy 1-2 cars, right? So now you have 2 car loans that you're paying for. Oh, okay, well, get a good job. Well, that's going to require an education. Got to go to school, right? Got to pay your student loan debt. So now we're just talking about putting yourself into multiple forms of crippling installment debt. And then if you have any credit cards and you're irresponsible with those as well, that's another, you know what I'm saying? Come talk to me. Nah, all jokes aside though, yeah, you're just putting yourself in this hole of debt, right? And I feel like from mentorship that I've gained, one of my mentors, Herman Dolce, who I actually met a couple of weeks ago in Philadelphia, he's a firm believer of everybody doesn't have to be a business owner, but everybody should be an investor. And meaning just we should create, because of the environment, the economic climate that we're in today, we should create some sort of, we should have some sort of investment and have our money making money for us, right? Have these little money babies that are just multiplying while we're sleeping, you know, whether it's you putting in a couple of hours every week into some form of, I guess, business or an investment, right? Because it does take some time to, if you want to make money, it's going to take some form of work to do, right? But you can try and make it as passive as possible. Yeah.
And again, this is not knocking anybody that says they want to have a house and they want to have kids, because I respect anybody who does that. And it's definitely, it's a joy that I'll probably never know, but I know that they're doing great things because they want to be the best parents that they can be. And, you know, if they accept that, hey, I'm going to do it over here, but that means this is my financial hole, or this is what I'm going to have to accept, or my long-term retirement goals, then I'm going to accept that. And it's an accountability part, because you're holding yourself accountable to know that this is what I accept. So you're not going to be that majority or minority vocal voice that says, I got screwed over, they lied to me, I'm in this much debt, bail me out. Like, nope, I knew what I was getting into, and I was more than happy to accept what came with it, because the trade-off is I get to have a family, I get to have a house, and whatever it is. The amount of complaining that we see online and just that voice out there, it's like, you know, life ain't easy. We think it is, but it really isn't. And people forget it, especially you guys, like, you've never seen the country at war. You know, our parents grew up in the Vietnam era where, you know, they were losing uncles and brothers out there, and it was just normal. And then we had 9/11, but then we weren't drafting people to go fight. But we've been in this period the last, you know, 15, 20 years where we just haven't been at war. So now all the fighting tends to be inside. It's left versus right, red versus blue, Trump versus Biden, all this other stuff, because there's no external threat, or we don't perceive it to be. So now it's all this headbutting now.
It's a baby civil war. You know, just
Exactly.
creating a whole bunch of division for no reason.
It takes a special person to be able to put all that aside and say, you know what, I got to do what I got to do. It's nobody else's fault that I'm in my position. It's my position. It's still America. It's still the greatest country in the world. I can still make it here. So what if things are a little bit more difficult now? I'll be able to get through it if I just hunker down. So let's talk about where your business adventures are going. I want to get to you, where you're going with finances. We'll start with you, Marcos. So how has your business evolved from where it was now to this new journey that you're taking with the online mentorship program?
Yeah. So, whereas last year it was still primarily just focused on building clientele, building the brand up. Now, like I said, I've ventured off to where I have 5 trainers at my location now. So, including myself, 6. I do offer them in-house mentoring. So I help them build their business. I help them get clientele. I help them boost themselves on social media, how to leverage social media. And I've been doing that now for a little bit over a year, to the point now where I've actually finished my own digital course, which will be focusing on fitness coaches, growing their business, starting and growing their business to making at least 10K monthly in revenue from their business. And also building an online platform to getting clientele too. So now my energy and just the business has shifted to not only just getting clientele and building that up still, but now also helping other fitness coaches get to the level where I'm at. And just teaching them the ins and outs of it and exposing them to what private training looks like, and just exposing them to an opportunity that isn't really sought off, but more so isn't many opportunities like it out there. To where I'm literally opening the door for people to come in and develop and grow their business, and giving them an opportunity to do so and a platform to do so, without them having to worry about getting the equipment or investing in softwares to run their business. All that stuff is provided just by investing their time in me and investing their time in my business, and pretty much using that as their opportunity to grow. So
how do you do that? Because I'm sure you've gotten this pushback at some point from somebody to say, well, how do I separate myself from the whole group? Because I mean, trainers, it's a dime a dozen. The market is saturated with personal trainers, especially in San Francisco. Social media, I mean,
there's a million.
Yeah, exactly. And it's how do you separate yourself from the pack? What makes, everybody starts out with the right motivation. We want to help people get in shape to be better. You just want to see the satisfaction that comes from knowing that you've made an improvement in somebody's life physically, because you got them to, get in the shape that they want to get into.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're in bodybuilding shape necessarily, but they're in the best shape that they want to be in. But then again, how do you compete with everybody else? Because as a client, you just want to start your journey. You're just looking for who's in the shape that I want to be in. He is, okay, I'm going to click there and I'm going to go to his program because he's got the 6-pack abs. He's got the 18-inch biceps. He's got all these awards. How do you get your personal trainers to understand that and be able to power through it to separate themselves?
Yeah, and it's just by offering them the opportunity and being open with them and letting them know, like, hey, this is how I've gotten to the point where I'm at. And if most cases, like I said, they're coming from either having no experience, or the only experience that they have is training at another commercial gym, whether, 24 Crunch, whatever it may be. So that experience is completely different. That opportunity that they give is completely different to what I'm giving. And I think the biggest thing is differentiating yourself. My offer looks a lot different for fitness coaches. I'm actually giving them the opportunity to not only just have a space to where they're able to build their business, but I'm also teaching them how to build their business. I'm giving them the resources, the tools to build their business. And I'm not out here saying like, hey, like, give me 80% of what you make. I'm actually giving you an opportunity to have more money in your pockets. And I'm pretty much your resource, your tool to helping you get to that point that you want to get to. And I think having that is different than what most places will offer. And I think that's what's starting to open people's eyes, and gravitating them to starting their career or becoming trainers at my location.
So do they have to come to you with their certifications already done first, or you help them get that and then you build upon that? How's that work?
Yeah, so I definitely tell them, get certified first, just because, there's nothing really I can do for you in that sense. You got to get certified, and then you'll come to me. Like I said, now that I have this digital component, you don't necessarily have to be a trainer at Fear. You can, when the course drops and it's up there, you're able to actually just purchase that course, and you'll still have live mentoring with me. You'll still be able to take take all the value and information that's in that course to build, whether you want to become an in-person trainer or you want to build an online clientele base. You're able to do that through that course. And then there's that other flip side. Since I do have the brick and mortar, I do operate my own gym, I'm also funneling trainers now to helping them build their business and pretty much giving them a live depiction of what their digital course is. But I'm giving that to them live at my facility and building their business up, building their clientele. So I'm just giving a different component. But I think the biggest thing that separates me is that I'm actually creating a fair opportunity for people to gain. So there's no real way to lose unless you simply don't do the work. And since I've created that model, so it's so, I don't want to necessarily say cut and paste, but it's pretty much cut and paste. Like, you do what it says to do and you add your own twist to it for your own branding or whatever, you should reap the benefits from it. But if you don't do it, then I don't know how much more I can help you.
Where do you see the future of personal training going? Do you think it's better to be a trainer in an established gym and get clients there? Is it better to get your own online presence and have a wider net, but then less in one-on-one interaction? Or maybe it is like starting your own gym somewhere else. And what are the pros and cons of each from what you've seen?
Yeah, so I mean, pros and cons for each. Let's just start off with the online. It's great to have an online base if you're able to do it, and you're able to grow that to where it's sustainable. That's obviously like the bread and butter, right? You don't have to be present. You just have to be, obviously, pay attention to them, reach out to them and make your connections that you need to make. But it's also a lot more timely and a little more difficult to do because you don't have any personable connection with them. It's just kind of like you're reaching out to them versus the in-person. Whether people are doing small groups or big groups or one-on-one, yeah, you're putting more time in, like literal time of you being there, but you're also building more of a connection. And the cool thing with that is that you're able to take a lot of clients that you've developed and you've given them the skills on how to carry over what you've taught them, and you can make them online clients. And like, hey, like, you've done a really great job. You've been able to lose all this weight. So instead of you just, leaving and doing your own thing, here, let me just switch it to online. And that way you could still be involved with the programming and you never have to fall off course. So that's one way you can do it. Obviously, the con factor for being in person is that you are putting a lot of time in, and it's pretty much you're trading money for time. So if you want to see it like that, yeah, that's the con. Whereas for me, I enjoy that process. Obviously, it's my gym, so I have to be present there. So for me, it's a little bit different. But I actually enjoy building that relationship with people or building that community with people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's to have the one-on-one experience is probably triumphant over online. But then again, there's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
And it's finding that balance as a personal trainer of, you want to maximize the business and how much income you could generate. But then also there is something about being there in person, helping them get to where they're going to get to. Almost like this podcast here. I make sure that I have my guests come here live and in person because it's a different environment than if we did this over Zoom,
For sure.
where I could have a bigger reach and get more guests. But then there's something about the personalities that don't mesh because you have a hard time building trust with somebody when you're not right in front of them.
Exactly.
It lasts you longer than what you can do for that personal session because you were able to work with them. They can see you one-on-one, just a different level of human connection that you can't get online.
For sure.
But then I get the business side of it too. You can get more clients for being online. So as long as you're able to explain that to your prospective clients or your personal trainer, people who are going to buy the program, then I think it's going to do wonders for them because they can decide where do I want to be at in this whole environment.
And even with just the mentorship I provide and even with the course, you have the flexibility to choose your route. So the information will cater to both. So you have the flexibility if you're like, hey, I want to see what in-person is. All right, well, go ahead, follow the steps to the in-person route. If you're like, hey, like my time is way too packed, I really just want to build an online presence. Okay, well, the information is there, so you can do that as well. And just to answer your question about where do I see the future of personal training going, I definitely see it's on the online, but I don't ever see the personable touch leaving. So having that place that you can go, because a lot of people, they want to do it. A lot of places have gyms in their location or their apartments or whatever, in their buildings or whatever it is, but being able to get out and go to a gym, whether it's a private gym, commercial gym, I don't think that would ever leave, just because people want to get out of their environment that they're spending time in. I do feel like the transition is going into more private training than it is more of the big box gyms. it's more so again from a personable aspect. You have somebody that actually owns and operates a gym that you can actually talk to or relate to, versus like we don't even know who the 24-hour CEO is, right? Or we probably won't ever make contact with him if we go to the gyms. So it's more of a community base with the private gyms, and I think that's the trajectory in where it's going. And I think just the biggest thing for people that are starting to wanting to look to open in their gym, I say the biggest thing is don't rush into getting a building. I see a lot of people are making that mistake to where they're like, hey, if I get the building, people will come in the doors. That may work, like maybe sometime, like maybe. But the biggest thing is build your clientele base, build your brand, and then go get your building. Yeah. Because at that point, and I think a lot of people have that confused, and that's what started me up, is that I already had a clientele base in my backyard. I already had at least 20 clients. I already had equipment. So by that time, it was just a transition. Just let's move everybody into the building. Where the mistake people are making is that they're getting the building and then they want to build the traction. But what you forget is that once you sign that paper for that lease, whether you have traction or not, that rent's due on the first.
Mm-hmm. So Markos, if your clients are asking you, or your prospective buyers of the program are asking you, hey Markos, I get that, I want to build a clientele, but I need a place to actually train them. And if I don't have anywhere, then I guess the only option is to buy, or is to get that building. Or is there a different way that you can help them get their clientele?
Yeah, I mean, if they're in local, you can come train at my facility. I help you pretty much build all that. So you don't have to worry about overhead costs, the cost of investing in your equipment. Now, there are people that I've extended that offer to, and they're like, hey, like, I just really want to build my own brand. I want to do my own thing, which is perfectly fine. And, you know, the best thing I can do is give them some advice on how to go about it and wish them the best of luck. But I'm never going to force anybody to, or tell them like, oh no, don't do that. Like, come with me instead. But I'll always extend that offer, just because the reason why I even started it is I wish that there was an opportunity like that for myself starting off, where somebody can extend an offer, or there was a place I can go to build my business or myself as a brand. Well,
speak really fast, because I remember what you were telling me, but speak really fast how you were able to build your clientele when you didn't have a building and you had nobody to go to, because you did this in the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Everything was closed. How did you build your clientele with almost nothing?
Yeah, and just really quick, just to touch on that, is that during the pandemic, it was just a frozen time, right? So me and my couple of friends that we were working out on it consistently, we were just putting it on social media that, hey, we're working out, and if anybody wants to get up from the couch and work out with us, come and do it. And I think just from doing that and being consistent in that, I started building a community just from that point on. And I told you I was working out in the fields, or any field that we could find, or any park that we can find where we weren't getting kicked off. And I think just from that, the community started building itself. They're like, oh, this guy's serious about fitness, or this guy just wants people to work out. So once I started making the transition to my backyard, now it's become more established. From the backyard to an actual gym, now they're like, oh, wow, look at all this progression, that they have something that they're able to, the community was already built from the very beginning. So I didn't really have to, at that point, it was just more so like, let's keep the momentum going versus like, where do I start? Gotcha. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's so important, because the people who have the mindset of I need to get to the gym first with the equipment and the lights and everything, is actually, if you want to really be honest, you could just get some basic stuff. You can get at Target or Walmart, yoga mats, a couple medicine balls, maybe a set of dumbbell weights. Mm-hmm. Log it in all your, just throw it in the back of your car, head out to a local park, find a nice flat field, and just put out, hey, we're going to be out here today. Get some people out there and start some programs, because what actually gets people to buy these programs or buy somebody's vision is that they have to believe in your message.
For sure.
And you don't need a lot of money to make that happen. But if you can convince people what you believe in, then they'll start to follow you. Then they're the ones that are your early on clients in the business. When it opens its doors, they're right there with you because they believe in the message. And then now they're your biggest advertisers, because now they're telling their friends. Their friends trust them. They trust you. Now you have a better way to get clients funneled into the business, as opposed to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, which can work on marketing. But then you end up having to do buy two, get one free, 1 free month, this and that, because you're trying to get people to buy based on the bargain, which can work. But if you can do the other side better, which doesn't take as much money, but takes a lot more time and effort.
That's the point right there. Yeah, it takes a lot of time and effort, and that's what I started off with, right? And the only difference between when I started and now is that it was dead COVID. So nothing was moving. So if you had some motion, it looked like you had a lot of motion compared to where nothing was happening. Now I'm sure it's a little bit more difficult. Bills are back and up and running and the world is back in action. So it probably will be a lot more difficult for someone to really invest that same amount of time to building their brand up. But especially with something as fitness where you could find it anywhere, right? You can go on YouTube, you can go on Instagram, you can follow people, whatever it may be. It's so easily accessible. I feel like you really have to take that time to build that community, to do that quote unquote free work, lugging the equipment around, because people get to see how committed you are, how dedicated you are. And then you start building a brand around that. Where if you bypass that, like I said, it could work for you if you're good with your marketing, your branding and all that stuff, but it's not as organic. You will start feeling like you're feeling way too much pressure. And like I said, once you sign that lease, you get to the third, and after that, you get the late fees.
Do you got a success story about somebody that's taken this program, or that you've helped mentor into a personal trainer who's now gone off and they're doing their own thing and they're starting to do well? Do you got somebody in mind?
At the time right now, I don't have anybody that's actually left me, so they're still with me. But when they started with me, I mean, like, let's just even say from February. I mean, at February, they were like, during February, they're like, hey, they came to me and they're like, hey, I don't think I can continue. Like, I'm thinking about shutting down my business. And I told them, like, look, I know, things are hard. Just, it was a slow month in the beginning of the year. I was like, just take it, see how this month does. Like, go back to your fundamentals, go back to what we talked about. And the very next month he hits me. He's like, dude, I made the most money I ever have. He made almost 10K. He was literally like one client away from hitting 10K. And I told him, like, yo, the goal for this month is 12K. So for him to see that progress and see where he started with, I think he had like 3 clients when he first signed on with me, to now he has clients that he's traveling clients. He has like at least 30 plus clients now, online clients, in-person clients, that he trains at the facility. So seeing that success story of somebody that started with very few or didn't even have any sense of direction to now they're making the most money they've ever made. They were able to buy a second car for his family. Their kids are good. It's just, it's dope to see, because you're like, oh man, like this person's put in the work, but they've also trusted in me to get them to this point. And the fact that they've been able to do that and they're successful doing what they're doing now, you just start seeing like it's a different person that they're becoming. And you're like, oh, well, I'm glad I've been able to help that person out. So I know if I can do it for them, I can do it for the next one and the next one and the next one.
That's excellent, man. It's great to hear that, to know that there is a way to make it happen, even if it seems like you're never going to get the clients and bills come due. You keep putting the effort forward. Eventually you'll get there. It just may not be the ideal path you thought it was when you first signed up with. So that's great to hear. And Christian, we've been talking a lot about money, finances, a lot of what motivates men to spend things and whatnot. And this is obviously something that's very passionate towards you, as you're now starting a new business that you're going to be launching hopefully very, very soon, called Pinnacle Prosperity, correct? Yes. Pinnacle Prosperity, correct?
Pinnacle Prosperity Enterprises.
There we go. So tell me a little bit about that, and how can you help a lot of people who are struggling with their finances, and what is it that you're trying to focus them on to make them get in the position that they want to be financially?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of launching my own credit repair company, Pinnacle Prosperity Enterprises. So basically what we do is, or what I do is, I help remove derogatory items and delinquent items off of people's credit reports, whether that's a bankruptcy, whether that's a charge off, a repossession. You might have some late payments that you need to remove off of a credit card or some type of loan, right? And that's what I specialize in, using something called consumer law. Consumer law, a lot of the consumer law that I use is either from the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act or the FCRA, which is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And these are laws that were just put in place through our Congress, and they help protect consumers.
So if somebody is having credit problems and their score's low, you're supposed to ideally have above a 700 to really get the decent loans out here. And there's some people that have 400 or 500 credit scores, and it's usually because they either didn't pay their bills on time, or they're over leveraged. Maybe they're maxing out all their credit cards, which doesn't look good, or maybe they're opening up a credit card every few months, and that's just way too many accounts to have, which brings their score down. And that might be their only avenue to pay off their bills, because they're trying to just some people are in the mindset of, I'm just living paycheck to paycheck. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of that going around here. It's just with the cost of living, it's paycheck to paycheck. And sometimes you don't have enough to make ends meet on the paycheck. So you go to your credit cards or you take out a personal loan and then you can't pay that back on time and that hurts your credit score. So with a lot of that, how can you help people who are in that spot now to repair their credit and also put them on a better path financially so that they have the tools necessary to be able to live a more prosperous life without having to worry about having to make so much money?
Yeah, so basically, if somebody was to come to me, I would try to make sure that they're already in a financial position where not only they could help take care of me, but I'm not going to take on a client that isn't in a responsible financial position, right? So if you have a charge off and maybe a repossession, right? I might see, okay, well, when did this repossession occur? If it occurred last month and I ask you, okay, well, what are you doing to kind of combat this? And you come at me, well, I don't really know. I don't really think you're a fit to be a client with me because not only are you in a position to pay me, but I might be asking you to give me your last dollars. I want to make sure that I can't give financial advice, but I want to make sure that you're in a position to, hey, I'm actually paying down my credit card debt. I'm actually consolidating my debt. And now I can do work on the damage that has already been done, right? So maybe I can remove some of those late payments. Maybe, okay, this charge off might be reporting on Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion after I sent in. So basically with some of the factual disputes that I do, if it's part of consumer law, part of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you can send in an initial dispute just saying, hey, I don't believe that this account is completely 100% accurate, right? So according to 15 USC 1681 EB.
A lot of numbers.
Yeah, sorry.
Pinpointed.
The consumer reporting agencies have to furnish a credit report that is 100% maximum possible accuracy, right? So if I send in my initial dispute and then after my initial dispute, they send their investigation results back, and this actually happened to me with a client, and I just got the results back yesterday. It's from TransUnion. It's reporting negatively. Now I can either do one of two things. I can send in a dispute saying, hey, there's factually inaccurate information on this credit report. Please do a reinvestigation and please delete this account. A lot of the times they try and give you the runaround, so you can also take them to arbitration, and that's a whole process in itself. I'm currently actually in the process of doing that right now. So kind of to sum it up, I try to do work on the damage that's already been done and try and remove that from your credit report. But if you're going to continue to keep on putting yourself in the hole, it's going to be a never-ending cycle. So you need to be in some kind of responsible financial position to where you're taking accountability for your life. And now I can help lessen the damage that has already been done.
Okay, so are we talking about removing things from your credit report that shouldn't have been on there in the first place, or things that were supposed to be on there, but because it's been on there too long and the person has shown a better history, that we can take that off of there? And is that what you're fighting for? Which one of those is more your specialty?
Definitely if it belongs to somebody. If it belongs to somebody and this is a mistake that you've already made, I can help remove it from your credit report. But like I said, I'm not going to be telling you to not pay this debt. Hey, pay your debt back, right? This is an obligation that you put on paper and you signed. Now, I can try and remove this from your credit report, but if you keep on missing payments again, then they're going to start reporting it again as well.
Okay.
Right?
So probably somebody who's in a position where they need to get a loan soon, whether it's a mortgage or maybe a car note, and their credit score is not where they want it to be at, but they've shown that they've made some mistakes in the past, but they've made improvements. They're doing good. They just need that extra bump on the credit score to be able to get that loan. They might call you and say, hey, Christian, I have this collection account from 5 years ago. I paid it off, but it's still on my account, still showing negative, but I've done all these payments. Can you help me get that removed so I can bump my credit score up so I can get that mortgage that is going to give me the best interest rate? Does that sound accurate?
Definitely, but I also deal with some cases that are a little bit worse than that, right? So like I have a client who has a bankruptcy on her credit report, and then she wants to get a house. And so I'm working with people who have bankruptcies. I'm working with people. One of my clients has a charge off and a repossession. So I'm helping remove those items from the report, and basically just now that they're in a better financial position and they're actually trying to take accountability for what they've done, they're trying to, pay their dues, do what they have to do during the process, but at the same time, move forward as well. I don't think that just because somebody goes through a financial hardship, they should be completely set back for the next 7 to 10 years. You know, that's kind of 7 to 10 years. That's a long run. You can do a lot during that time. And also, I don't just cater to people who I don't just cater to people in those situations as well. I also cater to potential business owners, right? People who want to start their own business, but in order for you to obtain credit, you have to personally guarantee your you have to personally guarantee your social security number, right? So even if you have your own business with an EIN number, in order to get some form of credit, they'll have to run your credit and they'll have to see what your personal credit looks like in order for you to get credit. Because if you do that with your EIN, then that goes into something called corporate credit. And in order for you to have corporate credit, you need to be an established business that's making probably $1.2 million a year in annual revenue. And you have to have a paydex score of 90. A paydex score basically means you have some kind of vendor account that's reporting to business credit reporting agencies. And that's kind of like your business credit score in a sense. So if there are any aspiring entrepreneurs who want to get personally guaranteed funding, I'm also in the process of adding a funding aspect to my company as well. Just to, it makes sense, right? I'm an entrepreneur who is looking to venture out into business, and I know how to gain capital for certain people just through the mentorship that I've gotten. So I can take you from possibly somebody who may have, had a couple of dings on your credit report, made a couple of mistakes. If we remove that and you've paid your dues and now your credit score is up, you're about 700 or 700 and above. You have some history on your accounts. You have a good little mix of credit. We can see what we can get you on the business side. And now you've got some startup capital for a business as well.
So what are some basic tips that people can do to make sure that they maximize their opportunity to get themselves the best credit score? And what are some of the habits that you think that people are doing now that are actually hurting their credit score, but without even realizing it from what you've seen?
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer of using your credit card for absolutely everything, but very responsibly. I don't buy anything that I can't afford. I use my credit card for my everyday life, right? I need to buy some body wash. I need to buy some deodorant, so I'm not out here, you know what I'm saying, stinking it up. I know that I have basic needs and necessities. I need to go to Costco. I need to get my meal prep for the week, right? I'm going to use my credit card. You get incentivized to use your credit card. Plus, it's FDI insured money. So they're going to try to make sure that you get your money back as well. If you're using a debit card, it's like walking down an alley with $10,000 of your own money versus using your credit card. It's like walking down an alley with $10,000 of somebody else's money. But in order to use it responsibly, I would, 35% of your FICO score is made up of just your payment history. So pay your bills on time. 30% is your credit utilization, right? What's the overall credit limit? What's your overall credit limits all together? And see, basically, don't over leverage yourself, right? If you have a $10,000 credit card, don't use up $5,000 of it. That's 50%. That's not going to help you in any capacity, right? I would keep your credit cards at 10%. I would keep your credit cards on a monthly basis at 10% or below at the time of reporting. I would get a little mix of credit. So I wouldn't over leverage yourself to try and get an installment loan, because myself personally, I don't have a lot of debt in my name, especially bad debt. So I don't have a lot of installment debt. But if you have, maybe a car note, right? Have your car note. Don't put anything else extra on there, but have a balance of installment and revolving credit. And then, don't inquire about credit too much. The inquiries can start to add up after you try to apply for credit cards. They'll get little dings on your credit score that knock, 3 points off here, 5 points off here, so it starts to add up over time.
Yeah, we got to be very careful about telling people to use their credit cards for everything, because most people are not going to know what that responsibility means. And honestly, the credit card companies, that's how they make their money.
Yeah, this is not financial advice. Sorry to cut
it's
you off.
not financial advice. We understand that. But where I'm at now in my life, I do use my credit cards for everything. Yeah. But because I know how to use them responsibly, I pay the annual fee. I get all the funds back based on what it tells me that I can get back. I don't carry a balance, so there's no interest payments. If it's the right credit card, I maximize it for all the points. I use this credit card for travel because I get the most points. I use that credit card for groceries because I get the most points. But that's the responsible way of doing it.
For sure.
I don't have the money in cash, then I can't buy it. So that therefore I don't carry a balance over it, and I don't get hit with all those interest charges.
Yeah.
The people who can do that are the very small percentage of people that the credit card companies don't necessarily like, but they'll reward you and say, you know what? You figured out the rules of the game.
Yep.
You earned this. Here's your reward. Here's your free first class ticket to Japan, or here that cost $13,000, but you got it for free because of, all your utilization of points. Here's your special a discount on this because you've been a good client of ours. That's only a small percentage of the people who use it. Yep. Most of the people, unfortunately, who use credit cards use them, I want to say irresponsibly, but don't use them to the maximum benefit. They're paying interest, they're carrying balances, they're paying annual fees, and they don't know how to pay them back. They're getting points, but they don't know what that really means. So they use them for maybe lower value things like a gift card. And this is where people get so upset about the top 1% in this country saying they're ruining everything because they see things like that. But if you know how to play the game, you're going to be able to reap all the benefits. For sure. And I hate to say it this way, but the people at the top, part of the reason why they have mastered the game is because there are people at the bottom who don't know how to play the game that are basically paying the credit card companies. Yeah. If I'm an investor and I invest in Charles Schwab or JP Morgan or, Chase Bank, and they're making money because they've given offers to people who unfortunately cannot afford them. This goes back in the beginning when I said, when you sign when you sign on that dotted line for that student loan debt, you own it. It may look like enticing. It may look like you can pay it back, but if you don't understand what you're getting yourself into and you now are over leveraged, well, you're paying back money. You're paying back the interest. You're paying back the annual fees. The banks are going to get their money, and the people who reap the benefits are the ones at the very top who understand how to actually do it. And it sucks. But it is the capitalistic system. If we made it fair and everybody just knew how to responsibly pay, there wouldn't be any airline miles. There wouldn't be any incentives to use a credit card because there would be no money to pay for it.
It's their business model.
Yeah,
their business model is unfortunately it's predatory, but at the same time, if we look at it, we live in a capitalist society, right? A free market capitalist society. That's kind of what there's economic classes, right? You're gonna have the lower class, the middle class, and the upper class, right? And I just feel like it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate reality because I try to do my fair share of giving to the less fortunate as well. But if you want to be at the top, you gotta learn the game, the rules of the game. Yeah, at some point.
And I think it stems down to having that education, right? The people that are at the top or middle, middle tier that are working their way up to the top, and the 1%ers and so forth. They know the rules of the game, but they're also educated on the rules of the game. Whereas the lower class, if you give them a credit card with, let's say, $10,000 a credit limit, for them, they're like, oh my God, I got $10,000. What am I going to do? Oh, I did want that pair of shoes. Oh, now I can go get that backpack, because you don't have the educated. You're not educated enough in knowing that's not really $10,000 you have. That's because you're now going to pay interest in whatever you buy, or if you want to go buy that $200 pair of shoes, you don't have $200 in your account. So unless you have that money matches $200 here for the credit, then I have $200 in my account to pay the credit. But if you don't have that education, you would just might think you got free cash in your hand, and then when you load it all up, you're like, oh wait, not only do I not have free cash, I now have to pay more than $10,000, and the education is what I think is the biggest disparity. And also the people in the lower class are not willing to either invest in that education or willing to go look for that education.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. I'll tell you one quick story. I'll never forget this. I was in Vegas, met up with a buddy, and during the pandemic, she was telling me that she was at the roulette table. I forgot what casino it was, and this lady comes in, goes right to the roulette table, or maybe the craps table, whatever it is, and she's holding up this check, and she says, "Everybody, I got my stimmy. Put it on here. Put it on black." And I'm like, wow. It's just some people saw that as free money, so they went to Vegas and just dropped it like it was nothing. And it's unfortunate because and where did that money end up going at the end of the day? Went right back to the top. Because people who understand the game know where it's going, and it's not that they're doing anything wrong. They just know how to play the game. These are the rules. And, you know, again, it's unfortunate. It is capitalism, but if we can do something to help educate the people who don't know about this, about what this idea of delayed gratification looks like, how putting the work in now can make it so now you can become the people at the top who are taking advantage of it because you put that time in, that work, you got that education, and now you're the one reaping the benefits. So you can provide more for your family and for everybody else. You can give money back. I mean, who's it? Bill Gates now gives most of his money away. You know, say what you want about the guy, you know, he is one of the richest people in the world, and most of it now he's at a point where he can just give it away to his foundation. For sure. Say what you want about the foundation and where the money actually goes, but the idea is he's still giving it away. And a lot of these billionaires and millionaires end up doing it at the end because you can't take it with you. What are you going to do with all that money at the end of the day? Just put it in a hole, give it to your kids. What is it? Even
a fraction of it, if you were to pass that down to your kids, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's generational wealth in itself. Just a fraction.
Exactly. So that's a whole other problem in itself, is how much do you leave, and this is a problem for the people at the top only, how much do you leave your kids where you can set them, where you can give them a good way to make their own way, but not too much where now they're just spoiled and they only know that they're going to get money left. There's that fine balance. I think it was Warren Buffett said that he's going to give his kids just enough so that they can start off and do their own thing and not a cent more. And there was Daniel Craig, one of the actors, who said, I'm worth this much money. My kids aren't getting a dime of it. They got to go on, they got to work and figure out their own way, the way that I did.
Jackie Chan did the same thing with his son. He's like, I'm not giving him anything. Yeah, Jackie Chan's like, he doesn't give a cent to his son, and just kind of get it off his own. But I think that's what's really cool about what Chris is doing at the age that he's doing it, because there's a huge educational factor component that's going to come about it. I'm sure it's going to. I'm just speaking in existence for him for the future, because now you're getting this 23-year-old guy that's teaching you about how to get credit, or how to fix your credit, how to get business funding. And you can look up to him as somebody that, oh man, like this guy didn't fall victim to the scene, or he's 23 years old, 24 years old with no debt, but is making X amount of money. Now you start becoming that icon, person that somebody can look up to. And then there's that educational component that's going to come with it, to where now you're giving people information on how they can come up, on how not to fall into debt. And, seeing that from somebody that's in the East Bay, seeing it for somebody that is way younger than we see people that take on credit repair businesses. They're well in their 30s, sometimes 40s. Seeing somebody do that in their early 20s, not only is that respectable, but it's something that can really be applied and given back to the communities as well. Very important stuff, man. I wish you well, and you definitely have a good head on your shoulders, and I'm excited to see what the future. It's definitely a service that people need to hear. Question is, how can we get them to listen? How can we explain to them that you need these type of services so you can buck the trend, you can stop the tradition of maybe, family members who keep going down the wrong path. Let's break that cycle. Let's get into a more positive aspect. For sure. So this has been a great conversation, guys. Thank you both so much for coming out.
Thank you for having us, man.
Absolutely. Time flies, as you can see, when you're in a conversation. The good stuff just keeps coming out, and at the end of the day, who wins is the listeners. So by the way, if you're listening to this, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share with anybody that you feel can get benefit from this. It's word of mouth recommendations like this that help the channel spread. And plus, the more that you subscribe and the more that you like each video, the more the algorithms pick up that people like it, and they end up pushing it out to others within the network. And that's how the message spreads overall. And if you're listening to this on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other podcasting sites, please make sure to leave a comment, because for podcast algorithms, it's slightly different. They get more interaction from the comments. So the more you comment on the podcast itself or the audio only, the more that those platforms will then push it out to everybody. And where can we find, where's the best place that people can find you guys? And I'll make sure I link it down in the description.
Yeah, so if you want to get in touch with me, my Instagram is going to be the best place to get me at. My IG handle is @feartraining. And you can go ahead and shoot me a DM, check out my content. If you're trying to get in shape, holla at me. And if you're a fitness trainer that's looking to grow your business, start and grow your business, holla at me too.
If you want to find me on Instagram, you can find me on my personal page at TMC Chris CRHR1S. And then if you want to find me on Instagram, you can find me at Pinnacle Proent, PINNACLE PROENT. Appreciate it, man.
That's real talk, everybody. That's what this whole thing is about. So thank you guys for coming on, and thank you all for watching and listening, and everybody have a great day.
Much love. Yes, Lord.